the way that happened initially was me feeling like she was saying, "You're a terrible dad."
Yes.
I can't believe you would do that. And because of what you just said, I did have the guilt. I would under-discipline the kids and be afraid that they were going to pick mom over me.
You're listening to the Nacho Kids Podcast, where we discuss all things step-family related. Real stories, real people, real help. Your hosts are the creators of the Nacho Kids Method and the Nacho Kids Academy Step Family Coaching Team, Lori and David Sims.
We never left, so we're back.
How can you be back if you never leave?
I don't know. All right. We didn't go nowhere, so we still here.
Yeah, we've been sitting here for a week, just waiting to record again.
Yes. David, we had a very eventful weekend.
Yeah, we did.
We had some friends come over.
Yeah, we have friends.
Yeah. And it's been a long time.
I know.
But these friends traveled a long way to come see us.
They did.
And they get here, and I open the door, and these confetti bombs go off.
Yeah, they did.
I loved it. Loved it. Even the next morning when I woke up and saw it, it made me smile.
Yeah, I loved it after I realized what was going on because my initial response was somebody's getting shot. You open the door up and it's like, pow, pow. I'm like, what in the world was that? Stuff flying all over the place.
Yeah, Jackson's like, I heard, lock the door, pow, pow. He said, I was about to bust out with the gun.
Man, but yeah, it was an interesting weekend.
Yes, we played some games.
Yeah, we did.
And we went to the tractor pool. And that was fun. I love the tractor pool.
Yeah. Is that a Southern thing or does it happen anywhere else?
I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't know either. Well, it's kind of like NASCAR. We thought, for the longest time, NASCAR was kind of a Southern thing, but no, not anymore. I mean, they race out at, California and everywhere else.
All right. Before I forget, we do have another winner of the Sylvia Krakauer Nacho Kids Academy Scholarship to announce. And that winner is Sally D.
Welcome, Sally D.
Sally D, please check your email and we will get you started.
Click on that phishing link we sent you.
No. All right. What else we got going on, David?
Not sure.
Me either. So let's just talk about our guest. Oh, wait, there is something else. We do have a t-shirt contest going on for our Instagram followers to celebrate us reaching 1,000 Instagram followers. So go to Instagram, like the post, follow us, tag someone so they can enter and be entered into the drawing to get a Nacho Kids t-shirt of your choice.
All right. I guess you can see the t-shirts at nachokids.com/store.
Yes, you can. Our guest today is Chris Burcher. Chris is not a stepdad.
Okay.
He is a bio dad in the blend.
Mm-hmm.
He's been married 6 years, divorced 11 to the other lady. He has 4 kids total, ages 15, 18, and 19, and a 5-year-old that is an hours kid.
Wow.
Yeah. He started over, David.
So we get to hear from the bio dad married to the crazy stepmom. Is that what this is?
Well, no, because she's not crazy. But here's the kicker, David. All the kids are girls.
Ooh, poor
Yes.
guy.
Mm-hmm.
Poor guy.
He understands that being a stepmom is hard.
It is. Toughest job you ever loved. Oh, wait a minute. That's Peace Corps.
And of course, he struggles with always being in the middle of the stepmom and the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Chris actually has his own podcast, and it is called Knowledge Plus Experience Equals Wisdom.
Okay. Cool.
So you can check him out at chrisburcher.com, and we will put the link in the show notes. I do have to talk about one part of our interview. He said that one of his kids wrote, "I hate Kathleen" on the walls, which is the stepmom.
Mm.
And I said, yeah, it's kind of hard not to take it personally when she says, "I hate Kathleen."
It's the other Kathleen.
Yeah, it wasn't you, Kathleen.
Yeah, but I mean, how many bio parents do you know that their kids tell them that?
But it's different.
I know it's different, but it happens frequently.
Yep. I hope to get Kathleen on our podcast too in the future.
You want to talk about the wall incident?
Yes, I am going to talk to her about the wall incident.
Let me guess. You're going to say, Kathleen, did you see the writing on the wall?
No, I'm going to say, how'd you feel when that stepkid wrote, I hate you on the wall?
I wrote it right up under it. Feelings mutual.
No, do not do that. That is not nachoing for all you listeners. All right. So let's get to listening.
All right. But first, here's a word about the Nacho Kids Academy.
There is a way to save your sanity and your relationship, and it's called the Nacho Kids Academy. In the Nacho Kids Academy, you will learn the skills and knowledge to properly nacho, techniques to handle step-family challenges, ways to improve your communication, and much, much more. Visit NachoKidsAcademy.com and sign up today to join other step-parents who are seeing the life-changing benefits of nachoing. Again, that's NachoKidsAcademy.com.
Today, we have Chris Burcher. Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me, Lori.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your family. You are not a stepdad.
I am not. I have a wife who is a stepmom, and I have the most empathy and sympathy for her because I think stepmother of daughters is probably the worst job on earth. And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, and I've had a lot of really bad jobs. But yeah, I have it. I have the good end of the deal, I would think.
Actually, you're right. The hardest relationship in a step family is the stepmom and a stepdaughter. I
mean, it's yeah.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 4, and 3 of them were from my first wife, and who was remarried, and those girls have a stepbrother, and it's pretty cool. He actually takes care of our animals when we go to town. And then my wife and I have a together child. So my 4 daughters, 19, almost 18, 15, and 5.
All girls.
Yeah. I was meant to have all girls, though. It's just one of those things.
We laugh because David has 4 sons and I have a son. And we joke about how God knew not to give David girls.
Well, I honestly think, like, I remember when I was the first one to have kids in my friend group, and we had girls. And then my next best friend started having kids, and they had 2 boys, and they would come over, and I would just, I was already sort of hitting the anxiety parenting mode, but I would watch his boys play, and it tripled my anxiety. And I remember thinking, as they would jump from the couch to like the steps and roll onto the kitchen table, that this would never have occurred to my girls to do. Like, yes. where does the source, what's the source? And, I was a boy, right? But I don't remember any of that. Like, that energy level, just like it. Yeah. God did not want me to have boys. He gave me a pass on that.
Yeah. I remember when David and I started dating, Jackson was 3, and he would take Jackson and throw him on the couch. Oh gosh, I was scared to death something was going to happen to my baby. Right. I'm like, you're going to break his neck, or he's like, oh, you got to toughen him up. And he tells Jackson all the time, you're lucky I came along, or you'd be a pansy.
Which, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe he was more gentle by nature. And then that's part of it too. I mean, I think people talk about having girls. This is, I got to get this off my chest. So what I get a lot around here is, I'm around, especially when my girls were younger, and I would get this from so many people of, you better get a shotgun. And I'm just like, what? He's like, you got those 3 girls, you got to defend them from all those boys that are going to be coming in. And I get that that's like a good natured sort of traditional line of thinking, but my thinking, and I really started getting angry about this, and I never really said anything because I understand those traditions are so ingrained, and it's weird enough for people to see a dude with his daughters. And it would be even weirder to say this, but now I'm saying it as loudly as I can, that I want to raise my girls to defend themselves. Like, this idea that women need a man to defend them, I can't stand that thinking. And I part of what I want to do by talking about being a dad of daughters is to say that I have no interest in that. I've always told my girls, there's things I don't want you to do, but it's your life. And so what I hope for you is that you only do the things you want to do.
Yes.
If you want to do some things that I would wish you didn't, but you want to do those things, go for it. And you can accept the consequences of your actions, and it'll be an experience if you can do that. What I'm afraid of, is them being so weak that they would let a man take advantage of them in whatever way, or anyone take advantage of them in whatever way. And so to think that I would be raising them to require defending like that, I don't know. It just, yes, I knew right away that I was going to be a little kooky.
A little
kooky dad, or, a non-traditional. Because I certainly grew up like that with the traditional male and female roles. And maybe it's because, I am a man that in the primary caregiver role. I mean, at that time I was actually a stay-at-home dad. And so there's a whole lot of gender issues that comes in there. I mean, a lot of men looked at me like, oh, to use the pansy word, like, you're a pansy, like you need to be out there working your job and making the money and taking care of your women. And I'm just like, I don't know, man, this is a pretty cool job.
Yeah, like Mr. Mom.
well, yeah, and that's another one of the traditional molds. Like, and it goes both ways, because I don't want any credit, right? I'm just parenting, just like women have done for 100,000 years. I'm not the babysitter. And people would say this all the time. Oh, cute. Is it mommy's day out? Look, daddy's got the girls and it's mommy's day, mommy's night off or whatever. I'm like, no, man, I'm their parent. I take care of them.
Yes.
Sometimes mom does. Sometimes I do. Sometimes we both do. But that's, kind of, especially in the Southeast, that's a radical model. And I don't deserve any special attention for that. So don't give it to me. Don't point out the fact that it's weird to you to see a dad with their kids out. That's on you. That's not on me. I'm not the weirdo.
But yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I get it from both sides. I get it from moms. I get it from dads, that it's peculiar.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about that, I'm sitting here thinking it's no different than how society expects a stepmom to jump into the motherly role.
Oh, man. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a whole, talk about there being no book. Like, there's not really any, I always say there's no stay-at-home dad groups out. There are groups for me to mirror, but you don't see it regularly in society. Like, I live in a town of about 10,000 people in a county of about 40,000. And I may know one or two other dads that I can relate to on this level. And there's certainly no book for that. But for the stepmom, it's like, it's such a taboo subject. I don't know if that's a gender thing and what's different about that, because there's probably more stepmoms out there than there are, primary caregiver dads or whatever. But man, no, everybody it's like the worst of Instagram and Snapchat. You have to just pretend like everything is wonderful, because if it's not, it reflects negatively on you as a person, you as a parent, you as a step parent. I mean, that. Yeah. Yeah.
And see, that's one of the things with the Nacho Kids thing. We take a lot of heat with that because, I mean, we've gotten death threats. It's crazy how people react to things. But here's my thing about the whole thing. It's reality. They are not your kids.
Yeah, right. Well, and this is the big struggle. And my wife always, what I hear her say more than anything is, I'm not their parent. It's like she pre-qualifies anything. I'm like, okay, what's going on? We'll have some sort of conflict that's brewing, with us and the kids, or the kids are misbehaving or doing something. And she'll start it with, well, I'm not their parent. And I know the weight of her saying that is so huge, because what's in that simple statement is, here's the way I would do it, but I can't do it like this. And then we're kind of different in our parenting, which I guess a lot of parents are. And so then I know Chris would do it like this, which is different. So there's a conflict that I'm going to have. And then there's I've only been a parent for 5 years, like a straight parent, she didn't grow up with them. So you don't have that like instant love when you see them born. She didn't give birth to them. So there's that whole difference. And so by the time she's coming at me, the next sentence is we're so far apart that it's going to be really difficult to have a conversation and make sure everybody gets their needs met. Yeah, it's just, I've never really, and my former career was in ecology, which is sort of like the study of of everything that influences animals. I mean, it's a really big, comprehensive, complex science. And I look at this and I'm like, this is way more complex than anything I've ever had to deal with.
It is. And a lot of it, I think for most women, I'm not going to say all women, we have those motherly instincts and we want to help and we want to make your kids be the best they can be, but that's not our responsibility. And then we have the conflict of, I think you should do this, but I'm not their parent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough reality. I joke, but it's true that sometimes you have to have a split personality. And your wife probably feels that way because with your older daughters, she's not their mom, but with her daughter, she is. So It's like you have to kick into different roles at different times.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's neat to watch her do it because what I think at the end of the day, well, and I always say this anyway, is whatever you do as a parent or step parent is right. Unless you're beating them or, I mean, there's some things that are obviously wrong, but when you're actually trying to do something good. And so that's what I tell her is like, well, you have to tell me how you feel. So understand where you're coming from. And then we're going to make some sort of compromise about what we're actually going to do. But what I try to tell her is whatever that is, it may not be what I want. It may not be what you want, but it's going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've put this effort into it where I think, and not to speak for her and not to say that this is wrong, but she is definitely, and maybe it's the instinct that you're talking about. She's definitely more tied to what she thinks is the correct thing to do. Whereas I'm more like, well, there's a whole lot of different things we could do that are probably going to be fine in this situation. What do we want?
Mm-hmm. You're more open to different ideas.
Yeah, because I just simply, my fundamental belief in parenting is that, we're here to sort of, tap them back in line when they get out of the way, but I'm not in any way trying to control or build or shape or like, that they're their own person, right? I'm just helping. I'm not going to make them into something I want them to be. I'm not going to, relive vicariously my childhood through my kids, or I'm not going to decide that they need to do this career path. I'm way more willing to let the world, the universe, parent with me, which is a freeing. Some people might look at that and say, "Oh, you're just, lazy. You're just copping out." But at the same time, I'm recognizing something I think is true.
Yeah, that they're their own person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, we get attached to these things that we think are correct, right? When really, we don't know. We weren't a parent until the baby came out. It's not like we come into this experts. We're all figuring it out as we go along. And I think that's a big thing for step parents, especially, is there's this societal impression that we're supposed to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with non-parents. If you're a non-parent and you look at a parent, it's like, look, you made a choice. You did this. You do it. Shut up and leave me out of it and just parent your kids. That really annoys me. But at the same time, I get it. But we're doing something that we have no idea about. It's like starting any new job. You have to figure it out as you go along. But I just think my wife is more attached to what she thinks is going to be the right thing to do, and I'm less so.
Mm-hmm.
That's what.
And how long have y'all been married?
It'll be 6 years. Yeah,
okay.
Next month. Yeah.
And how long did y'all date before you got married? 2
or 3 years. And that's probably really kind of an interesting story because I had actually had a vasectomy, and we had my wife, our biggest. She's 9 years younger than me, and we fell in love, and that was obvious. And when you're dating, I protected my kids from this; they didn't know, and so it was this weird thing of levels of seriousness. Like, okay, we're serious enough where I'm going to introduce you to my kids. But before I do that, we need to have where's this going? And so it turned into, well, her interest and my interest really were to be married. If this is you're going to meet my kids, then we better be serious about getting married. And then hers was, well, I want a kid. And for me, I had already sort of closed that door. I had 3. It was overwhelming. I don't know. I was expecting to meet someone that was my age who didn't want kids, and that's not the way it worked out. And so we went back and forth as I sort of wrestled with that and whether that was even possible. I didn't understand that you can reverse a vasectomy. And so we had some struggles back and forth, breaking up. I mean, it was terrible. And then I just sort of realized that the pain I was in when we weren't together was probably an indicator.
Oh, that's so sweet though.
Well, I mean, I think it was like that for both of us because I was only 2 or 3 years divorced from a pretty shocking divorce. So I was really scared to death about getting married again, and then another kid on top of it. But we resolved those issues. And the reason I'm telling this story is I had the procedure done just a couple months before we got married, with the understanding that the probability isn't great. Right. Reversing a vasectomy is not a guarantee. Mm-hmm. And so we sort of had it in mind that we had at least a year before she even had a chance of getting pregnant. Well, she was, morning sick on her honeymoon.
Uh-oh.
And so when you ask me how long we've been married, all I have to do is think about how old my daughter is. Because, yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
So that reversal worked pretty quickly.
Yeah, I know. I always said I should contact the doctor and be like, you need to publish a paper about me or something. Because that was, works better than expected.
With David having 4 kids, I didn't want another one with that scenario. I think if I would have ended up with somebody that had 1 kid or 2, then I would have probably wanted another one, but I didn't want to drive a bus. I mean, and 5 kids is a lot of kids.
Yeah, 5 is a lot.
Yeah. And David didn't really want to start over. His kids were 9, 9, and 10 or whatever. And so he's like, I don't want a baby. And I'm like, but I want another baby. But then the reality of it is, again, I didn't want us to have 6 kids.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I think that it was the best decision because I see what an ours kid does to the other kids sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, with my son, I don't think that he would have taken it well. He would have maybe felt left out because, here's my mom and she's got a baby with David and they're one happy family and my dad's not here. It causes a lot of mental challenges. With
discomfort.
With the kids. And a friend of mine, she had an ours kid and we had talked about it. And she was saying the same thing, that it's a different kind of dynamic with her
totally.
and her husband's kid versus her kids prior and his kids prior. And she said that in hindsight, she doesn't know if she would have done it again.
Well, yeah, and that was my whole reasoning for not wanting to have another kid is what it would do to my kids, because once I got divorced, I realized, okay, this is my whole reason for existence now, is I've got to take care of these kids in a new and different way, because now and this is on me. And I see now that this was sort of not necessarily correct, but I had a lot of guilt. Now I have kids that I never intended them to be a part of a divorced family, but now they are. And so I was admittedly sort of probably trying to compensate for that in the way that I parented them. And I sort of shifted my efforts into being even more about the kids and less about me. And so to add an ours kid or even a stepmom to that, I had a hard time with because of exactly what you're saying. It's going to change their whole dynamic. And I remember the worst day of my life, or the most guilt I felt over this whole thing was the day that we told the kids that she was pregnant. And my second daughter, have you seen the movie Bridge to Terabithia? It's about this girl who lives in this fantasy forest, and it's just beautiful. And she's, free spirit, and she's creative, and she develops this whole make-believe world, and she brings this boy into it, and it's awesome. It's a great book, great story. And I've always said that my second daughter lives in Terabithia. I mean, she is so in touch with her. But she would also, like, when she's upset, it's 4 hours of screaming in her room, right? And so when I told her about the baby, she, like I'd never seen. She had the worst fit of her life that lasted multiple days with, writing "I hate Kathleen" on the wall. And I mean, and I was convinced in that moment that I had ruined everything that I had on that side of the equation, right? On my first family side of the equation. That's a terrible feeling. And it's a real risk. But now, 5 years into it, she's the closest with my youngest daughter. And she figured it out.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. When y'all first started dating, obviously the dynamics were your kids probably liked her. Things were good.
No.
No, really?
No, but what's the second part of your question?
Well, that kind of messes up the second part of my question. So they didn't like her straight off the bat?
No, think about it. I mean, I was the mom, right? And I think
Yeah.
when kids are divorced, they want their parents to get back together, right? That's what they want first. For some time, they live with that fantasy. And Eva, my second daughter that had the big fit about this, she has told me that since then, that she was still in that mode of hoping that her mom and I would get back together. And so the baby made that much less likely to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the parent that they're around the most, that they feel the most sort of nurturing connection with is the one they don't want to lose to someone else. And in their case, another man moved into basically my bed, immediately after I left the house. And so they already lost their mom in that sort of way, right? So they had, right when all this was the worst, they also had to deal with that. And so that it would happen to me upset them even more. And so I think they projected that onto Kathleen, right? She represented their loss of me. And so they were polite and they were nice. It's still to this day, like only in the last few months have they even thought about saying I love you or to her, and it's still in a casual, like as we're all leaving, we might say I love you, and they'll be like I love you guys, and no hugs or it's still a very slow process.
It is. Now the reason I asked you that is because most of the time when the dating process is happening, the kids are fine. They are fine with the stepmom or the stepdad that's, just not the step parent yet. And then when they realize that things are getting serious or the marriage happens is when things turn to crap.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Or things will be fine the first year or two of marriage and then things turn to crap.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I guess I got a better end of the deal then.
Yeah.
I would rather it be better later.
Exactly. Because we had one of David's kids was so excited about us getting married. Wow. And year two, he was the ringleader for burn Lori at the stake.
Wow.
Get Lori and her kid out of the house. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
I wonder if it's age related. Like how old were they then?
Well, let's see. When we got married in 2009. So the triplets were 9 and Avery had just turned 11. Mm. So, but I mean, they were excited about it in the beginning, especially this one. But I thought he didn't like me trying to parent him, which he didn't. But he said the straw that broke the camel's back was when he told me something that my son did, and my son said he didn't, and I believed my son.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Man, God, that's hard. Yeah. See, we're lucky because the ages are so different. I mean, the big sisters, are big sisters. They're not peers. Right.
And see, our kids were 5 years apart.
Yeah, and there we have some of that, like you favor this person. But as far as favoritism goes, the most conflict I've ever had is with my wife. She early on accused me when my youngest was, less than a year old, accused me of not loving her as much as the older kids. Mm-hmm. And that hurt. And, and I'll never really know. I don't feel like it's true, obviously, but maybe in some ways my behavior reflected that or whatever. All I know is I don't hear that anymore. So I'm hoping, and we go to marriage counselor every once in a while, and I do therapy because I like it. Mm-hmm. And it always comes up where I'm sort of like, I'm in the middle of all of these relationships, with 6 people. And I don't know if it's because I put myself in the middle or because I'm male or because I'm the dad or what, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I have to manage the flow of energy between every possible pairwise combination of those people. And that's, a lot of pathways.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm the moderator of that, right? Like I have to be aware of what's going on and then modify sort of how everybody operates, either myself or, by talking to them to make sure that flow is comfortable as possible for everybody. It's like being a part of a living organism and I'm like the CPU or like the the brain.
Yeah.
And I know that's like egotistical because I actually don't control how people feel and any of that stuff. But that's my maybe that's just the primary caregiver nurturing part of me. But that's what I want to do.
Yeah. No, David often talks about how he felt like he was in a vice. Me pushing on one side, the kids pushing on one side, his parents and sister pushing on one side. And he couldn't make anybody happy. So he decided to make everybody mad.
Well, I don't think I'm lucky because I'd realized I can't make anybody happy. And that also assumes that I can't make anybody mad either. But I sure can do that pretty well. So it's more about not making people mad, I guess.
The comment about your wife saying that she didn't think that you loved your ours daughter as much as your older kids, that's very common. It's very, very common. But a lot of it's because the bio dad has guilty parent syndrome. So he only has his kids 50% of the time. He's not going to discipline them because he doesn't want them to want to go live with mom. A lot of times that's the reason. I definitely struggle, but I make a really, I'm aware of it and I try to fight against it, And one of the things I'll say that, as the shining star of step parenting, the sort of most beautiful result of this all happening. And, I don't want to be married to my ex-wife anymore, but the way that divorce went down was terrible. And I don't wish that on anybody. And so, but it led me to Kathleen, and all that stuff is great. But probably better than any of it is the fact that Kathleen has helped me be a better parent because I no longer have that sort of codependent thing with my first wife where we just sort of passively were experiencing parenting. Kathleen's a much more active parent. And, if all goes well, she'll homeschool our youngest. And I don't know, she's amazing. And so I've learned how to be a better parent from her. Now, the way that happened initially was me feeling like she was saying, "You're a terrible dad." Yes. I can't believe you would do that. And because of what you just said, I did have the guilt. I would under-discipline the kids and be afraid that they were going to pick mom over me or whatever. And so, but she pointed that out. And first it was rough. And then she realized, okay, I need to be a little more gentle with him. And I said, okay, I need to be a little more open-minded. And we navigated the waters. And in the end, I am so grateful that especially my oldest, who just is now for the first time away at college and having sort of a difficult time. If I had stayed divorced and continued to guilt parent her, that would be so much worse. Yes. It is right now. That is so true.
Yeah. So there's a beauty to divorce and step parenting. And, I see the value. It's like my wife and I keep saying, we had to jump into an abyss, right? We didn't know what step parenting was going to be like, what me having another baby was going to be like, what us getting married was going to be like. It was unknown. We had to jump into this pit that we didn't know where the bottom was. And, but it was so, everybody says you'll be okay. You're going to live, right? You'll land safely, but you have to face that fear to get to the other side. And now that I'm sort of at the other side, at least to a big degree, it was so amazing. And I appreciate you having me on because I've never said that out loud. I've never really realized that to another person before. And that feels really good. I appreciate it.
Good. One thing you mentioned was that when Kathleen would tell you something, you took it or you heard you're a crappy parent. How, or do you even know, how did she change that wording or her tone or whatever to where you didn't feel that way when she came to you with those things?
Yeah, that is an awesome question because 99% of my conflict with her is exactly what you just said. Her wording and her tone. Right. And so she's self-described sort of Asperger-y. She thinks she may kind of be on the spectrum, and she is very literal. She doesn't understand, especially the Southern thing. She just doesn't understand why. What they said they wanted to have lunch. And I'm like, no, they don't really want to have lunch. They just said that.
Yeah,
it's just something they say to each other.
Yeah, when you pass somebody and say, how are you doing? They don't really care and they don't really want to know.
Yeah, right. And so it's that whole thing has been kind of a learning process, but I guess we're just really good at compromising. She's still quite literal and quite abrupt and quite blunt. But she understands now that I can take that the wrong way. And there was a time where it was, whose fault is it? Am I going to change and like stop being offended when or affected when I feel like you're beating me up? Or are you going to stop, using words like this to beat me up? And I don't know that either of us did anything consciously, but we just got so tired of having that same thing come up time and time again, where my feelings get hurt and she's just trying to communicate. But over time, I think she's relaxed a little bit and is appreciative that I take things personally. And I've also learned through a lot of work that, it's not always about me.
Yes.
So I don't know who had to do more work or who had to bend more, but we still have that problem. But I can only speak for me, have learned to go take a deep breath and just say, okay, I'm not going to have this reaction. I'm going to assume that she meant what she said because that's what she told me. And it's not about me. And so now we can move forward in the conversation.
Yes. And being a stepmom and having that mentality of how you let things affect you is so important, because stepmoms can take things so personally, like your daughter writing, "I hate Kathleen" on the wall.
Oh man. Yeah.
She can take that personally, but it wouldn't have mattered if Kathleen was the princess of somewhere, that your kids would have had that same reaction.
Yeah. Right.
It's not personal, but it's so hard to not take it personally because, it literally says, "I hate Kathleen."
Yeah. How else can you interpret that?
Yeah. So part of what we do with our Nacho Kids Academy is to teach people to think differently and to realize they've got to stop trying to control things they can't control and didn't have control of in the first place, but to control their reaction.
That is so huge, because I think for so many different reasons, we're both still, processing that lesson, right? That is so big and transcends so far beyond just parenting or step parenting, right?
Yes.
That, you can't control what happens. You can only control what happened, your reaction to it. And the control is an illusion in the first place.
Yes, it is. Like we're magicians.
Yeah, but for her, and this may make it harder and easier for her as a step parent. And again, I'm sort of projecting, but I think I know her pretty well. She came her life up until me. She was in control of, right? She had set her life up to the point where she was in charge, and she had eliminated things she couldn't control and just didn't even fool with them. But her life was very nice and neat. Just like a living room where everything is in its place, which is not, what you get when you have 4 kids. And so for her, the biggest challenge, I think, has been, redefining her control. And truthfully, she's still dealing with that at work, like outside her step parenting life. She's figured it out in the step parenting life, but she really hasn't translated that out into her work. And I have hopes, I'm really excited about our future, because I think if she can do what she's done in the home with her work, then she'll sort of like have mastered life.
Yes. And, we often tell people you can't care more than the bio parent. So for instance, if you didn't care if your kids made C's, but Kathleen expected them to make A's,
right?
There's no point. She's fighting a losing battle.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I think she's learned that. That's interesting.
And I learned to apply a lot of this into work, because I remember one time I was telling my boss that there was an issue, a quality issue with some product. And he said, "That's not your job." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And it bothered me. But then I said, "You know what? That's not my job." And used to, companies and bosses appreciated you going above and beyond.
Yeah, right.
Nowadays, no. For the most part, they want you to stay in your role. Don't try to go outside of that role, because they don't want to deal with it. They want to stay in their role. Now, if you have a boss that's wanting you to grow and they want to grow and they're looking at what's best for the company versus this is my job and I can just wait till retirement and I'm out. Then, it kind of changes that mentality. But it was hard for me to not care. And a lot of people will say, "How do you not care?" You realize it does you no good. And it's not that you don't care. It's you just realize that it's not fruitful. It's almost detrimental to your well-being to care more than whoever the hierarchy is.
No, it's true. I mean, especially in the workplace, because you do have the freedom to stop caring.
Mm-hmm.
If you physically can. I mean, I get it's
Mm-hmm.
hard. It's hard not to. If you have that kind of a work ethic, it's hard to compartmentalize it and say, well, I'm not going to care about this.
Right. And it is hard. And I don't know any other word to say besides not care. It's more of not being consumed with it, maybe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The same thing with my stepkids. It's not that I didn't care about them, but I realized that my caring more than their bio parents did about something did not matter at all. And it only caused conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. That letting go is, but I think that's a great metaphor for life in general, for everybody, way past parenting, way past work. I mean, what we choose, and the Buddhists would say, what we're attached to. Like, why are you, or is somebody attached to your kids making straight A's? If you really sit down and think about what that means, it's completely illogical, because the assumption is the same old BS that we were fed as kids. Well, if you make straight A's, you get into a good college, and if you get into a good college, then you get a good job, and if you get a good job, then you get good money. If you get good money, then you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That really never has ever worked out.
Yes.
So why would you go all the way back and say you're getting so worked up about these grades? But if you believe what I just said, then it's not going to have the effect that you want anyway. So maybe you can relax on that. And then you relax on that and you realize, oh, I'm less stressed. Okay, I don't have to deal with this. Oh, now that buys me some freedom. I don't have to spend all my energy doing this. But because we're attached and we don't, understand that, we do it automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
and that's sort of kind of what my podcast is about. Like how do we live better lives by picking our battles?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. What's the name of it, and what's it about, and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Well, so it's called Knowledge Plus Experience Equals Wisdom. And I actually use the mathematical symbols, but it's easier to find, just www.chrisburcher.com.
Okay.
And I talk about stuff like this, like being, at the top level, it would sort of be in quotes, being a better person, or being enlightened, or learning more, or why am I here, or what's the purpose of life? Those types of philosophical, I don't even know, questions. But what I'm focused on right now, and certainly parenting is an awesome example, but as a general conflict of the struggle that a lot of people seem to be in, me for sure, between the person that we are and the person that we feel like we should be. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like what we're talking about. Like, we feel like we should be parents whose kids get straight A's. And if we're not, then we feel bad. But then ultimately, we don't really care. Like, if you think about it, it's like, oh, I don't really care if it makes straight A's or not. But you buy into this line of thinking. And if you spend enough time thinking about that, you realize that that's because, like, most of what you believe is because of what your parents believed, or what your caregivers believed, or what your community believed when you were a kid. And that's where you learn stuff. And I think because I have 18, 19, 15-year-old kids who are getting ready to go through that critical point in your life where you flee the nest and you ask questions like, who am I, and what do I want to do with my life, or what do I want to major in college? Seeing them do that has rekindled that in me. Mm-hmm. And then I noticed that a lot of people, I'm almost 50, a lot of people around midlife kind of go through the same thing. Like, why am I doing this job? I don't like this. Why am I here? Why am I married to this person? Yes. And it's the same sort of struggle. And I think, as I've been in therapy for 10 years and I was a scientist in my previous career, so I combined those two interests into what's going on with that. And that's what the podcast is about.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, it is. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah. Cause a lot of times, and I think it is, the older you get, you're like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? It doesn't fulfill me. It doesn't make me happy. I'm just working for a paycheck.
Totally.
And granted, money's very important, but maybe you could cut some of your expenses and find a job that makes you happy.
Oh man. And so many of us, just like the parenting, it's like, we don't feel like we have permission to do that because our parents taught us that was not a good idea. Mm-hmm. And, you know, bless their hearts. They meant well.
Bless their hearts.
but well, you know, my parents are in their 80s. So they were born in the 30s. Their dream was their parents' dream, who experienced the Great Depression and World War II. So if you think about that, it kind of made sense in the 50s to teach your kids these things. But, you know, that was a long time ago, and we're in a different place now. But unfortunately, there's this, you know, we inherit these ideas from multiple generations back, and they're just sort of stuck. And so it's become sort of my mission to die having figured this out, at least to a bigger degree. You know, on my deathbed, I want to kind of be able to go, I dealt with that. And then in turn, I want to help other people do that. Like my oldest daughter struggling with college, I want to help her in a real way. And one of the most helpful ways I found is to teach her that, you know, that she has a lot of beliefs that she's inherited from, you know, my grandparents, basically, and that it's okay to question those. And it's okay for her to say, I think I just want to like sit by the edge of the stream and gaze at my navel, and I don't really want to go to college. And she has a dad who would be like, do it. And so
sit by a stream and gaze at your navel. I love it.
Well, that's sort of like my dream. And then go to the mailbox every week and there's a paycheck. Because you're right. I mean, the research shows we have to make, as a household family of like 3.5 or whatever, we have to make $60,000 to $70,000 a year in the US to not have real problems, you know, like hunger or, you know, nutrition or healthcare. And so, yeah, you got to at least do that. But I think the American dream and what our kids are aiming for is, you know, doctors and lawyers and internet influencers, and they got to make millions of dollars or they're not going to be happy. And I think the data show that when people get that $1 million, they're not happy.
No.
So maybe shoot for 60 grand and do have a little fun. In many ways, I think the millennials have it figured out. Like, we look at them and go, oh God, you guys are idiots. You're throwing your lives away. You're not investing money. You're having too much fun, blah, blah. But I'm like, you know, I don't think our model was that great. Maybe theirs is better. Maybe it's not.
Maybe there's a balance.
It's funny. The biggest fear I think people have, or the worst thing that I can think of, besides some, you know, terrible like accident or dying. Yeah. So, I mean, we're so concerned that we're going to end up homeless in the street. We're so afraid that we're not going to get whatever it is, some bare minimum existence. And I know that happens and it's terrible. And I really can't imagine probably worse than being a stepmom is, you know, end up ignored by society as a homeless person in the street. That's a terrible thing. But it doesn't happen to most people. We don't fall that far. We're actually very capable of taking care of ourselves and doing things if we're lucky enough to have the opportunity to do that. And that's a bigger problem that we need to solve. But my point is that, you know, it's our fear of this catastrophic event that's really kind of unlikely. That is why we get out of bed every day. What if we could flip that motivation to not something of fear or negativity, but of something of, you know, positivity? How am I going to make my daughter's life better today? How am I going to help my wife more today? How am I going to make today better than yesterday? And that's something that we all can do. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Yes. So what would you say your daughter is struggling with most with college?
Well, you know, leaving the proverbial nest. I mean, she's, you know, to me, I know exactly what she's going through because I did. You know, you go from all of the comforts and so I envision the human being as like an egg, right? Outside of our body, there's this invisible barrier we call our comfort zone. And as we get close to that comfort zone by doing new and different things, we get up to the edge, we retreat because we're afraid. And so part of life, some people choose a life where you go to closer to the center of your comfort zone as possible because everything's predictable. Everything is the same. It's comfortable. You know what it's going to be. That was her life, right? She watched her Netflix. She hung out with her friends. She went to her job and she came home and she had everything taken care of. Her bed was made. There was no variability in her life. It was incredibly safe because it was predictable. Now she's in an environment where she doesn't have those friends. She doesn't have any of that support. I mean, maybe she's got Netflix still, but it's a new place. It's new roommates, it's new classes. plus the weight of the world on her shoulders of you have to achieve, you have to get straight A's because, she's on this American dream path. So it's two things, she's pushing the edge of her comfort zone because she's doing something new, which is really an awesome thing that you'll learn in time that is healthy and positive. And you jump into the abyss and you learn to feel safer about that. But the other thing is, she's gotten on a path that she's not sure she belongs on. I mean, I think subconsciously she knows she's in the process of subscribing to someone else's dream. Mm-hmm. Maybe that dream is for her, but she doesn't really know yet. And so there's this cognitive dissonance. There's this struggle of, I don't know. And so this is what she says. I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, well, of course you don't know what you want to do. Nobody in college knows what you want to do. The only people in college that know what they want to do are the ones whose parents told them they're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. They don't really know either. They just, they just bought into the whole thing. They've been brainwashed. My daughter is not brainwashed. Her discomfort is because she thinks for herself and she knows something is wrong, but there's no system set up to like help her through that. But thank goodness she has me. Yeah. Right. That's, and so to me, this is like win it or lose it. This is my chance to succeed as a parent. If I can help her navigate this dissonance and release the weight of the world and the American dream, pushing her through this system, take a breath and just experience it for herself and find her gut, but all that noise is complicating the process. But if I can help her do that, then, I win Parent of the Year.
Yes, definitely.
not that I care, but I mean, that's a terrible time, but that's where she is. And, she has that struggle and it is real. And I think I understand why.
Don't remember the percentage, but it is a very small percentage of people that actually work in the field that they went to college for.
Oh yeah, it's tiny. Yeah, and I used to say, well, Coach, so check this out. This is my just newest. I used to say, because I heard somebody else say it, because I'm that person, right? I went to school to be a philosophy major. My dad talked me into getting a job that would actually, or have a major that would actually get me a job. So I changed my major, went all the way through, became a PhD doctor, taught school, and went, this sucks. I quit. Mm-hmm. So whatever. But then I look back and I was a philosophy major. And I used to say, and people have said, why would you let an 18-year-old kid decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life? Right. And up until about a week ago, I believed that. Mm-hmm. Right. I said, no wonder. Yeah. And then I've realized through a lot of work and therapy and stuff that my 18-year-old self actually did know, because I was lucky. Before I had that conversation with my dad, there was no pressure. I lived in this little Terabithia bubble where I didn't hear the outside world. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel I didn't want to go to college, but I figured if I was there, I was to do something I liked. And what did I like? I like philosophy. Okay, I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. And in the end, I don't regret any of the things I've done. But in the end, looking back, that is what I wanted to do. And so I've totally changed on that. I think 18-year-old people, if they can chill out enough and relax enough and reduce the pressure of their parents and the outside world trying to make them be somebody that they should be, mm-hmm. then they actually know what they want. But the problem is not knowing what you want. It's getting rid of all that noise and finding the peace and quiet to where you can actually feel what that is.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm like, I don't know if my 18-year-old self would have known, because I thought I wanted to do accounting. And I realized that the only thing I really liked about it was writing with mechanical pencils in those little blocks in the ledger.
But see, I would argue that you would have figured that out in the process if you did have the space and the freedom and the clarity of mind, which is no easy feat. I mean, but 12,000 years ago, we raised, people didn't, or, even 200 years ago, we didn't have this problem. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have cell phones 30 years ago. We were fine. An 18-year-old kid in 1500, well, maybe they didn't have a choice with what they were going to do. I don't know. It's hard to think. But
that's I work in the field, little Johnny.
Yeah, right. I mean, so maybe they didn't have but yeah, this. Well, it's kind of like, I don't know how much time we have, but as a stay-at-home dad, and as a former scientist, I have dealt with gender issues my whole life, probably just because I've been aware of them. I always sympathized with my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom. And I thought my dad was an asshole because all he did was work, so I've always had these models, right? Which have changed recently. My wife works and makes way more money than me. And so my role is different. And I drive the kids to school or whatever. And that didn't happen like 50 years ago, 30 years ago, even. And so, and the flip side of that, and so I've got whatever pressures on me. It's fine. My life is fine. It's actually freaking great. I suffer from too much family, right? I have too much family, and sometimes I wish I had a job, because actually going to work is a lot easier than staying home with 3 kids that are in diapers.
Oh, yes.
So, but what she struggles with is her role. So women are also going through, well, and it's more obvious. Everybody knows women are struggling with, how do I be the power CEO and the awesome mom? I mean, to me, that's might be almost as bad as step parenting. How do you be both of those things? Well, you don't.
Right.
That's like me. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be the successful academic researcher that I want to be and be able to meet the demands of this job that are going to, justify my paycheck. I can't do that and take care of the kids when, at the time, my first wife was also a professional making more money than me. Her job comes first. So I'm going to have to call in sick. I'm going to have to miss, the work meeting. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to fail. So instead of let this like die by 1,000 cuts, I'm just going to go ahead and bail out and I just work at home. I mean, at the time, my salary just barely paid for daycare for 3 kids.
Oh, I'm sure.
And most of the time, one of them was sick anyway. So I had to stay home with one. Yeah. So it was just like, that's stupid.
And then you feel bad for missing work because you're afraid you're going to get fired.
Oh, I would have gotten fired. I was already, the writing was on the wall. Yeah, there was no way. I mean, because at the beginning of your career like that, you got to work 50, 60 hours a week. And I was lucky to get 20. And so this gender reversal thing is difficult for both sides. And I don't think people talk about the men's side as much, but we also don't illuminate the idea that there's so much pressure on my wife and maybe you to be the best, her job that she can be, and simultaneously the best mom. And I just don't think that's ever been the case before. Like, why would you expect someone to be able to excel at those 2 things at the same time? It's asinine. And that goes to the 40-hour work week. And I mean, there's so many things wrong about, which is what's cool about COVID, right? Because it shows us that we can actually work at home, which for some moms is worse.
Yes.
Because now you've got your kids at home too.
And they're trying to homeschool.
But if you had your kids in school and worked at home, I understand some people don't like that model, but for me, that's like heaven. Because then I can get all my work done.
Yeah, because you can go throw a load of clothes in the laundry while you take a bathroom break or something.
Absolutely. And I've always worked better into that model, but I understand it. It's like no school COVID. 2 of my kids are great. They actually got jobs. They're like, I can get my work done in 2 hours a week. I'm going to get a job.
Wow.
Now that since we don't have to go to school. Oh, I'm so proud. And I'm like, go for it.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the awesomest thing I've ever heard a 17-year-old say. But one of them was struggling. She didn't do well. She couldn't do the assignments. She couldn't motivate herself to work. She missed the social interaction. So I get it. But my point is, the construct of a 40-hour week is the same thing we've been talking about. This is the way it's always been done. This is what you have to do. This is the only way it works. There's only one choice. And now with COVID, we're actually seeing, because I begged. I had a pretty decent job in the middle there when I was single and divorced. I worked for the government for a little while, and that job was awesome, except for the fact that I had about 2 hours of work to do every week, but they made me be in the office for 40.
Yes.
And so I begged them, and other people did it, but they wouldn't let me do it. I begged them, like, can I please work at home? Just getting the kids on and off the bus, because I picked them up, was a nightmare of my day. And they're like, why are you leaving the building at 3:30, Chris? It's only 3:30. What are you doing? It's not 4 o'clock. You can't leave yet. It's like, I'm sneaking out to go pick up my kids from school because you won't. But anyway, I begged them. Now that office closed, during COVID, and everybody worked at home, and they're not going back to work. And I'm like, I told you.
Yeah, we went.
Would have been just fine. Yes.
Yeah, the boss was, well, I can't monitor you when you're at home working. Well, you don't monitor us now. My coworker's playing on Facebook 7 hours out of the day. And she's over there reading novels. I mean,
getting her work done.
Yes.
So they put that in your pipe and smoke it. But yeah, it's this change thing. It's just this we're in the process, I think, of understanding that traditional ways of doing things, be it parenting or work, may be a little outdated.
Yes.
and that's my biggest sort of what my podcast is really about is we see problems, but we don't do anything about them. Mm-hmm. So
we just complain about them.
Yeah. So let's change them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to get back to one thing before we wrap up. What would you say was the hardest part of adding an hours kid to your blend?
Jeez. I mean, my mindset, my just the same kind of stuff we're talking about, my attachment to my ability to predict the future. Mm-hmm. Like I had this preconceived idea about what that meant, what would happen, what it would look like. And I don't have a crystal ball. What was I thinking? I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
If I knew it was going to happen, I'll go play the lottery a whole bunch of times. And
it's so funny you say that because, stepmoms hear it all the time. Well, you knew what you were getting into, or you knew what you signed up for. And I wrote a blog about you don't have a crystal ball. And if you did, you would be playing the lottery.
Right. And we may think, and that's the problem. We may think, I thought I knew what was going to happen. And maybe I was right about some of the things, because we can sort of, we kind of know what's going to happen. If you punch somebody in the face, you're probably going to make them angry. Mm-hmm. There's some things we can, but both, I didn't see how awesome it could be. Like I didn't leave any room for the beauty and then sort of the growth. And I was just writing I just made a post about, what I learned. I thought I was sort of quitting a job to be a parent and was kind of reluctant about it. It wasn't like I was like, sweet, I got the best job. I'm going to be a stay-at-home parent. This is awesome. I knew it was going to be hard.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I struggled to kind of get out of it. And I started a business. I did anything I could. I took crappy jobs to just sort of have I was so attached to the work identity. I didn't want to be just a stay-at-home dad because I felt like, the pansy or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I wasn't a man. But then I realized just recently that actually there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there is nothing wrong with that.
That it's fine. And there's nothing like I don't deserve any, special treatment about it. It's just something. And in fact, it's taught me way more. And so, yeah, I was afraid. I was terrified of the way that I would change my relationship with my daughters, that I would change the relationship with my girlfriend at the time became a wife, and that I wouldn't be able to handle a fourth kid, all of the things that anybody's ever scared of. But with the addition of now there's 4 other people, even my, I was like, what's my ex-wife going to think? Because at that time I was still sort of attached to getting along with her, or, her not fighting me. I mean, that's a whole nother level. I've never had to deal with seeing my wife's ex around, and they don't have any kids. So I'm so lucky that I haven't had to deal with those things. Or maybe, I'm not lucky because I didn't have the opportunity to deal with that. And I'm also lucky that I get along pretty well with my ex-wife. I mean, that adds huge layers of complexity. But yeah, just I was terrified of the unknown.
Yes. And do your older daughters, do they like being a big sister? Or do you hear them say, I'm sure you never let us get away with that?
No, I never. I'm sure they think that, and they think that Ren gets preferential treatment. But all I've ever said is, you were exactly the same way when you were at 5. You got exactly the same junk. You got exactly the same freedom, so don't start. And that's always enough. But I think they love it. And again, in their other family, they inherited a step brother that's their age.
Oh,
who, again, he's part of our family.
Yes.
and it's so cool to see how they, I think these kids today are so far ahead of us with their tolerance of, different lifestyles and races and all these other things. And just, they didn't come into this with the same negative beliefs that we do. I'm so worried about them reacting to the stepdaughter, whereas they just went, oh, baby.
Yes.
Oh, I have a brother now. That's cool. And that, watching them and just sort of realizing that they're better at this than me is awesome.
One thing that I want to bring up too is a lot of times like we talked about guilty parent syndrome. And so your wife may say, you're stricter on Ren than you are your older kids. But the thing is, she may in turn complain about you not being strict on your older kids. So it's one of those things of be thankful that he is stricter on your kid, because that's how you're wanting him to be with his other kids.
And if she said that, which she hasn't, I would say, I learned it from you. and I think we would laugh about it. And it's probably true. And I'm certainly stricter on the big girls than I used to be on them, right? Which I learned it from them.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. I'm just so, again, like comparing the terror I had about doing this to where we are now. I could not have even guessed that it would be so different. Right. Way less scary than I thought. There were some bad moments, don't get me wrong, but way more rewarding than I ever would have believed.
Yes.
And I'm sure, there's much more to come, but
and it's pushing through those times, because I think you mentioned something about feeling like you had made a mistake. And I remember sitting there thinking me getting married to David and bringing my son into this was the worst thing I could have done for him. And that's just how I felt at the moment. And you have to push through those moments, because that's not how I feel now.
Right. And I think it's also important to have your, you still matter, right? You still get to get things. And I was definitely in a spot where I had sort of surrendered any life I would have outside of work to the kids, right? I'm not going to have relationships. I'm just not going to do these things because I'm a divorced dad.
Right.
I've got to focus on this. Now, I think the flip side is pretty crappy. I see plenty of divorced parents that just go, I'm going to party and I'm going to do whatever I want and I'm going to, and it's going to be awesome. And I think that does have, a different, probably a little more negative effect on the kids.
Well, you want your kids to see a happy, healthy relationship.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
there was a time where I think mine didn't. They were probably like, that's pretty lame. And it was true. So but I would still rather err on the side of being less selfish than more. But again, I'm glad it worked out the way that it did. It's hard. It's hard. And what I really feel bad about is these fresh divorcees that think they're divorced parents that just going through it, that don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. For their kids or themselves. And that's definitely not true. But gosh, it's so hard to see.
It is. And then you get the whole court battle stuff. And I am not a fan of the family court system. And everybody that listens to my podcast knows that. And it's not because I've lost. It's just because I think it's a bunch of crap. And it's the good old boy system where, I'm going to fight you in court. But then the attorneys go out drinking and having a good time.
Don't get me started. I mean, that all falls under like my podcast topics. It's like the legal system is way broken.
Yes.
That because of what you just said, we see the problem. It's like, oh man, there is a problem here, but we just are so helpless to change it. Yeah. I mean, the United States is the most litigious, place in the world. And I think so much of what we do is because we're terrified of being sued because these avenues exist. Like, why could you even do that?
I know.
When I got divorced, and I give this advice to everybody, is all I wanted out of our divorce was equitability. What was fair?
Right.
Right. Like 50% of whatever matters is fair. And my ex-wife, she wanted everything. And even though it was basically her fault. And it took a while to sort of bring her to the middle. But I think the spirit of equitable, if that's what drives it, if fairness drives the process, then it is way easier than it has to be. And the problem, like what you're describing in the court system, that's gotten past fair.
Yes. I'm telling you, I could do a podcast every day on the family court system.
Yeah.
And once my child turns 18, I may just do that.
Right. It's funny as they get to that point. It's sort of like, and that was the big thing that shifted for me with having a new kid, is I had been counting the days till my youngest was 18. Right. And then when I told my brother, I said, I just hit reset, man.
Yes,
I just hit reset by like 10 years. But that's my fault. I mean, I forever even thinking that. besides what you're saying, there is a legal meaning to them turning 18, but
yeah, it means baby daddy can't take me back to court for stupid crap.
right. Exactly.
Yep.
Which has value.
Yes. Well, Chris, it has been great having you as a guest on our podcast.
Lori, that was so much fun. Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, it was fun. And maybe we
and for what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really important.
I'm blessed that we are allowed to do this and that the struggles that we went through, we're allowed to help other people not have to deal with the same thing.
Absolutely.
And maybe we can get Kathleen on.
I think that would be really cool. I would love to see her and hear her, speak on these topics.
Yeah. So talk to her about it.
Okay, I will.
Yeah. Let me know what she says.
Yeah, I'll be in touch.
Maybe
if you're interested, I'll see what we can do with you on my podcast. That'd be fun too.
Yeah, that would be great.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you again, and you have a great day.
Yeah, you too, Lauren. See ya.
Bye-bye. I have to give David kudos, y'all. Even though he nachos my sweet baby boy, he helped him today replace the alternator on his truck.
Sure did. And saved his sanity and our marriage.
Yes. Exactly. I really appreciate it because Jackson tends to get really frustrated with things. Not that stopped him, but you were kind of there to motivate him not to give up. Whereas I would have already walked off and been like, forget that.
Yep. Yeah. He reached the stopping point a couple of times. I had to pull him back in.
So thank you for doing that, Nacho Dad.
You are very welcome.
Appreciate it. And yes, I said appreciate it. That is a word here in Lancaster, South Carolina.
It is not.
It is now. All right. What else we got going on, David? Oh, the men's only Q&A coaching call is October the 9th.
Oh, well, I forgot about that.
Better not forget on October the 9th.
Oh, I'm sure I won't forget then.
No. So it's the men's only, first ever Nacho Kids Academy Q&A coaching call, October the 9th.
Yeah, that's like next Saturday.
Yes.
Wow.
I know. It's almost Christmas.
All right. Get your dudes up in there. Bring you an adult beverage. We're going to have a good time.
Oh, Lord, have mercy. And just for the record, I will not even be in the house.
I know. It's party.
I will be out of town.
Man.
I'm going to hide a recording device upstairs before I leave to make sure David don't talk junk about me. All right. Anything else we got going on?
I think that's it.
All right. Sorry it's been short and sweet, but we got to go.
All right, folks. That is our show for today. Thanks for listening and join us next week. And remember, life is good
when you nacho.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nacho Kids Podcast. Find us online at nachokids.com. Until next time, remember, life is good when you nacho.